Why don't you guys come forward over here? Hey guys, why don't you sit down? Let's go ahead and sit down because we're going to have a talk. We've got all these animals in church today. How many of you guys have pets? You guys have pets? Anybody over here have pets? Huh. What do you like about? What do you like about your pets? What do you guys like about your pets?
They're nice.
They're nice. Okay. What is that? They're what?
Playful.
They're playful. Have you guys? Yeah. Are you raising?
Polite.
They're polite. They can be polite sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes they can be unruly. But have you ever had that moment where you've had an animal that's come, like a pet that's come, and it like sat in your lap, and it just kind of purred, and or maybe it went to sleep, or it just kind of rested next to you? You're saying your head. Have you guys ever had that experience? What was that experience like?
It was cuddly.
It was cuddly, yeah. And how did it make you feel?
Happy.
It made you happy, right? Anybody else have that experience where there's an animal that's kind of just come? Yeah, how about you, Abby?
I seen a dog on my lap when we were sitting there.
You saw a dog on your walk? Yeah. It's a special moment, actually, when you've got a creature like that comes to you and will just rest, and it trusts you enough to go to sleep, or it trusts you enough to just sit there. Do you guys ever feel like worried sometimes, or do you feel scared sometimes, or sometimes do you feel, worried or scared or even sad sometimes?
I'm new here.
You're new here? Yeah, well, welcome. I'm glad you're here today. When you feel worried or scared or sad, what do? What helps?
It helps when you come with your family.
It helps when you come with your family, right? When you're not by yourself. Yeah, exactly. That's good. Yeah, thank you. Did you ever, if you ever were feeling worried or scared or sad, did you ever crawl on your mom and dad's lap and just sit there and let them hold you?
Yeah.
Does that ever happen to you? Yeah.
And when my sister was on her bed, I made her laugh. This is
That's your sister? You made her laugh? Okay. So when your mommy holds you like that, how does it feel?
It feels like very polite and calm when she likes to do this.
It feels polite and calm. Yeah, it helps calm us, right? So often in the church, we talk about this thing called faith. And faith actually really means trust. It means to trust in something. And so if you have that moment where there's an animal that's coming and it's resting against you and it's purring, or when you sit in your mom and dad's lap and you go to and you just feel comfort, that's a moment of trust. So there's this story that Jesus told where the disciples are saying, hey, give us more faith. We want more faith. We don't have enough faith. We need bigger faith. And so Jesus told them, so what Jesus said, well, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to that tree over there, uproot yourself and be planted in the sea. What do you think of that story? It's kind of a funny story, don't you think?
Yeah.
I think it's a funny story, personally. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? They're really, really small. I actually have some right here. I went to the store and bought some mustard seeds for this occasion. Do you guys want some mustard seeds?
Oh, wow, those are small.
Yeah. You don't want any? Okay. We're going to have mustard seeds all over the church. Abby, you want some mustard seeds? You could try them and taste them if you wanted. This is where we get mustard. They come from these things.
They taste like nothing.
I agree with you. So Jesus said, if you have faith that's even this big. So what's bigger than a mustard seed?
A lot of things.
Like what?
Us.
You're bigger than a mustard seed. What else is bigger than a mustard seed?
Puppies.
Puppies are bigger than mustard seeds. What else is bigger than mustard seeds?
Plants.
Plants are bigger than mustard seeds.
Even bugs.
Bugs are bigger than mustard seeds.
This room.
This room is bigger than mustard seeds. What's smaller than mustard seeds? Smaller than mustard seeds.
Mosquitoes.
I don't know.
They are the same size.
I don't know. I think mosquitoes are bigger, yeah.
A nanobot?
A nanobot is smaller than a mustard seed.
Bacteria.
Do you think that Jesus knew that nanobots were smaller than mustard seeds?
Bacteria.
Bacteria are smaller than mustard seeds, right? I remember when I was your age and somebody gave me a mustard seed and said, this is the smallest of all seeds. And I'm like, actually, no, poppy seeds are smaller than mustard seeds. So Jesus is saying, the disciples are like, hey, give us more faith, give us more trust, help us have big trust. And Jesus is like, trust isn't like a mustard seed. Ice cream is like mustard seeds. Like, do you want if you could have ice cream the size of a mustard seed or a bowl the size of ice cream, which would you rather have? An ice cream sized mustard seed or a bowl of ice cream?
A bowl of ice cream.
A bowl of ice cream, all right. So obviously a bowl is something that you want bigger of. But you know what Jesus said?
I have one.
Yeah?
A big bottle.
A big bottle of ice cream? Jesus is like, no, you don't have to have a bowl of faith. You get to have, all you need is a little bit. And so then he tells this story, which sometimes people think it's serious. Like, if you take up this tree, you can plant it into the sea and, it would grow. And a lot of people are like, oh, okay. And then I know when I was your age, I tried to do that and it didn't work. And then I didn't have faith. But I think that Jesus is being hyperbolic in that moment. Isn't that a great word? Hyperbolic. Can you say hyperbolic? Hyperbolic, yeah. Is that a word you guys use?
Yes.
Periodically? Yes? Good. Jason was worried that if I used words like that, you guys wouldn't understand the words I was saying. But obviously, you don't understand the word that I'm saying. Well, hyperbolic means to exaggerate something. So have you ever said to your mom and have you ever seen a spider and come up to your mom and dad and said, that is the biggest spider in the world? Yes. All right. Is it really the biggest spider in the world? No. It's a tarantula. All right. Okay. But you say to your mom, that's the biggest spider in the world. Or if like you hurt your toe and you're like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to die. Are you really going to die? No. Well, why do you say something like that? Why do we exaggerate like that?
Because we're worried.
Because we're worried, right? Or we want somebody to pay attention. Like you're adding the emphasis to it, right? To make attention. So when you're being hyperbolic, so if you're ever coming to your mom and dad and you say, hey, I just saw the biggest spider in the world, or you can say, hey, my toe hurts and I'm about to die, then you can say, oh no, Mom, Dad, I was just being hyperbolic. And they would know what you were saying. Well, I think that's what Jesus is doing. The disciples are thinking, hey, I need to have more faith. I need big faith. And Jesus gets hyperbolic and he's just like, oh, really? You want big faith? Faith isn't a thing that's big or small. Faith is something that's inside you. So he tells that story about lifting up a tree and putting it into the sea to get their attention of like, oh, you're thinking about size, but it can be small. It doesn't have to be big, it can be small. So if you think about that moment when you're sitting on your mom's lap or your dad's lap, is that bigger than a mustard seed or is it smaller than a mustard seed?
Bigger.
It's bigger? Kinda.
Depends on the way you look at it.
It depends on the way you look at it, right? Like like when you're trusting your mom or your dad, or when the animal is leaning against you, that's not bigger or smaller. It's different. It's a different thing. And yet it's a powerful thing. Like when you've had that experience of sitting in your mom and dad's lap, you said it made you calm. Like when you're sad or you're worried and you're afraid and you do that thing, how powerful is that? Yeah. All right, you guys, I thank you. So when we talk about faith, and when you grow up in the church and people are talking about faith, that's what we're talking about, is we're talking about trust. And we're talking about trusting God. Yes. I don't have kids. No. But I have parented lots of kids, believe it or not. Did you have a question, James?
I'm
every time I think of faith now, I'm going to think of mustard seeds.
Every time you think of faith, you're going to think of mustard seeds. And what are you going to think about mustard seeds?
I'm going to think that faith is the size of a mustard seed. Every single.
Yeah. And that faith is different than ice cream.
Yes.
All right. Let's leave on that note. That feels positive. Faith is different than ice cream. You guys could go back to your parents if you want. I would be curious for the rest of you, just your thoughts or reflections as about faith as we were talking about that.
It's not whether it's large or small. It's not whether it's large or small. It's whether it is.
It's not whether it's large or small, it's whether it is. Yeah. How about others? Even your own experience of faith. Yeah.
I just thought of faith as like belief, but not the same as trusting.
You thought of faith as belief and not the same as trusting. So thank you. So that's good. So often, if you look up Webster's dictionary of, if you look at faith in Webster's dictionary, there are two definitions. The first definition is trust. The second definition is belief. Right? So I grew up in a church where faith was believing in the teachings of the church. So believing in the stories in the Bible, believing that certain miracles happened, right? That's whether or not you have faith. And so faith is seen as kind of giving intellectual assent to certain things. That's often a view of faith that we've grown up with. It's not the predominant, it is a predominant view in many churches, but it's actually not the predominant view. That's actually not what the Greek necessarily means. I mean, the Greek is more emphasized on the trust aspect of it. And I know for me that was important because, you know, when I grew up in the church, believing in certain things was really important. And then if I started questioning those things, like if I didn't believe certain teachings of the church, or if I didn't believe certain things in the Bible may or may not have happened, then it felt like I didn't have faith. And I think a lot of people have felt like, oh, actually, if they don't believe these things anymore, they stop going to church because they don't believe what the church teaches. And I realized, you know, at one point when I was in college, I got on my bike and I was wrestling with these things. And I got on my bike and I prayed to God and I said, you know what, God, I don't know if I believe these things anymore. And so I'm going to stop. And I don't know if I believe in you anymore. So I'm going to stop praying. And I'm kind of checking out. Help my unbelief. And I did that for a couple years where I was agnostic because I wasn't sure I could believe anymore. But I still kept coming to church. And I still kept wrestling with God. And I think that's where what happened for me is I realized, oh, faith is really about trusting. Rather than and believe and that trusting that there's a there, that there's something that's good at the heart of things, that somehow God is good. And even though I don't always understand it, I do trust and live in it. Other thoughts about faith? Or your experience of faith? Yeah, Ross.
For me, I find that faith comes from personal experience.
Faith comes from personal experience. Like how so?
Things that occur that are just not something that you would anticipate or expect, but you recognize that you didn't do it, it just happened, and it's good. That generates me faith.
Okay. So you're talking about experiences where they're beyond your control at some level or beyond whatever your ability is, and something happens and it makes you feel like there's got to be,
I'm okay.
you're okay. You can trust. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Sherry.
Well, for me, it's like when reading that all you needed was faith as small as a mustard seed, that actually helped me. Because I mean, like when I first met you, I had none, and I really struggled with it, and I was actually very resistant. And I allowed myself to just be willing to start to accept, and it's grown from there. And now I'm just filled with faith, and I don't worry anymore. I know things will just work out. I mean, it's not always going to be pleasant, but it's going to work out no matter what. So it's like, and it just grows every day. It's just been amazing.
And I hear for you, there's a real comfort in being able to say you don't have to have a lot of it.
Yeah.
There's no obligation on your part to have a lot of
To
it.
start, I had none.
And to
now
start, you had none.
It grows every day, so I didn't and I fought with that in the beginning because I was like, well, I don't, if I have to have a certain amount because in my mind it has to be a certain level. But now it's like it's just something that just keeps growing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Which is a curious thing. Seeds grow. Like if you just have a little bit, a seed will grow. Yeah. Anybody else? Would you share what you shared at 9 a.m.?
Working with refugees, I'm always just in awe of how they've gone through so much trauma and tragedy and just really horrible, horrible things. And there's constantly saying, the love of God, thank God. Or they'll say, well, we're going to go and do this, God willing. And they have, through all their trauma, they're just so faithful. And though they've gone through these terrible things, they're happy and full of faith and glorifying God. And I just think, wow. Would I have so much faith if I had gone through this day? It's amazing.
Yeah. So you're talking about people who experienced a lot of trauma and hurt and suffering and loss, and yet in the midst of it, they've still encountered the goodness of God, and they still persist, right? Yeah. And in many ways, I think that's what faith is it's this orientation, it's this conviction that actually God is good. And I'm going to live in that and live towards that.
And be grateful.
And be grateful for that and let myself be transformed by it. Yeah, Mercedes.
Faith is strength.
Faith is strength. Okay.
If you have faith, you can overcome things. But if you don't, I don't know how people can live with that.
So for you, there's strength for you in faith, right? That there's a certain kind of conviction that gets you through. Yeah, Sharon.
It's what gets you through adversity when it hits you in your life and you go, I was not planning on that, God. That was not part of my game plan. And something shows up in your life and you go, I like the route I was taking, just so you know. And then he goes, well, why don't we take this? And you go, okay, I'm going to have faith that that's going to be the right path.
And so part of what I'm hearing you saying is it's this experience of having, in the midst of adversity, it's this conviction that God is there in the midst of it. Yeah. I mean, the earlier service, some of us were talking about, in that period when I was an agnostic, I was trying to let go of God. I was trying to distance myself from God, but God would not let me go. I mean, that was my experience, is that I was still being held by God. Yeah, Liz.
We have a picture that says, bidden or not bidden, God is present.
Say it again.
Bidden or not bidden, God is present.
Okay, bidden or not bidden, God is present.
And that's what I think that, if Jesus were to enter us today, he might say, you need to create your faith. It needs to be, it can be as small as bacteria. That smallest thing, and we might not even be aware of it all the time. So sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit less full of faith than normal, when I see that saying, it does remind me that it doesn't, if I'm not feeling that way, it's okay, because God is still has faith in me.
Yeah. So you're distinguishing between faith as being an emotion and faith as being, again, a fundamental orientation, right, towards something, about trusting something. Very good. Well, our animals are being really good, surprisingly. So we don't want to test our luck. I do think that the moral of the story is that faith is different than ice cream. Let's remember that. Faith is different than ice cream, and it's about trust. So we're going to do prayers of the people here real quick, and then we'll do the litany and blessing for the animals.